very interesting workshop that gave me the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm sorry, I have a really bad accent. I'm French, so we don't really learn English good. So I will present you today the use of the politicization of corruption scandals as a form of propaganda by the Belgian Rexist movement in the 1930s. We will hunt down the rotten with our brooms until the complete punishment of all the guilty from all the borders. This is sentence seen by Léon de Grelle at the end of the campaign for the 1936 general elections show how the movement sought to fully politicize the political, financial and corruption scandals in Belgium. The Rexist movement, or Rex, was the far-right political movement led by Léon de Grelle, and that grew out of the Belgian Catholic Party in the second half of the 1930s. Influenced by the teaching of Charles Maurras and Action Française and Charles Péguy, the movement began its political life in early 1936, taking as its watchword the purification of political life in the face of the excesses of what they call hypercapitalism and the scandals of political, financial collusion and corruption. Rex quickly began to build a discourse around this purification, denouncing corruption scandals involving all the traditional parties as the Catholic Party, Liberal Party, and Belgian Workers' Party, it's a POB. In the phenomenon of politicization scandals and publicizing them, from 1936 onwards, Rex denounced a series of scandals involving the Belgian political world in newspaper and right up to the highest assemblies, political assemblies of the country. Through a variety of cases, such as the National Bank of Belgium scandals or the Belgian Labour Bank scandal, Léon de Grelle and his men set out to denounce the political class in the second half of the 1930s by every possible means. They are creating propaganda campaigns and presenting themselves as the savior of Belgium afflicted by corruption and scandal. The politicization of the scandals also followed the radicalization of the movement at 1937 and took up the ideas of an extreme discourse by the movement. Historiography has not really paid much attention to its scandal denunciation in Belgium. So today my study will therefore focus on the denunciation of scandals as an element of doctrine and political action, then on the vector of the politicization of these scandals, and also studying the radicalization and the perception of the denunciations. So, in the early days of the Rexism corresponded to an establishment of a discourse based on the denunciation of political and financial scandals and corruption. A timid start had already been made in 1935, when Rex was seeking a political future under the aegis of the Catholic Party. But the split with its alma mater indeed led to an explosion of these denunciations. The Rexists quickly stepped up their attacks on scandal by targeting the Catholic Party. From the start of 1936, Rex and Léon de Grelle took the lead in attacking the leader of the Catholic Party and former Minister and Prime Minister, Paul Segers. The Rexist tactic was very simple in attacking Segers because they're considering Segers as the leader responsible of the oldest federation in the party. He compromises very well when everything told him to be cautious. That's why he is the first to perish. In a pamphlet, the first in the collection entitled J'accuse, Léon de Grelle attacked President Segers, accusing him of being a double-crosser, a bankster, a looter of saving, and a coward. Under these terms, the ideology of the movement began to emerge. A desire to unmask the bankster is a neologism with bank and gangsters, and to purify the country. To achieve this, the Rexists attacked all the political parties and the kingdom top leaders. So after Paul Segers, the accusation are against one of the largest Flemish Catholic banks, the Goran Bond, accusing the manager in association with other banks and mainly with two former Catholic Prime Ministers, Charles de Bocqueville and Georges Tanis, of accusing them of fraud. These accusations are not new in Belgium, everybody knows this, because they had already been denounced 2 years earlier by a Liberal MP. But the Rexist reused the affair, publicizing them with their press. In its weekly magazine Rex, as the name of the movement announced the disclosure of terrible documents on the Boron Road. This style of denunciation, this politicization of financial and corruption scandals involving members of political parties and the ruling class in Belgium clearly shows the direction that the movement is taking. Rex's main interest in politicization scandals was to have a central team that spoke to the people, and they are called these people the real country as a Chalmers distinction. But the Rexists saw that denouncing political and financial scandals was working in Belgium, so they decided to attack the socialists from now on, and mainly with the Belgian Labour Bank, an organization linked to the Belgian Worker Party, so the POB, and using the same press dissemination techniques. Rexist propagandists did not hesitate to point out that socialists had held position in the bank, and mainly a few days before it went bankrupt, rushed to empty the money from the bank. So in his newspaper, Rex quickly associated the socialists and the world of high finance, as we can see here. To vote for the POB is to vote for the high bank. To vote for Rex is to vote against the high bank, against all the thieves and traitors. To vote for Rex is to vote for workers' liberation. So it's like communism, but in the right for Rexism. The attack of the Belgian Worker Party was not disinterested, so in addition to positioning themselves definitely as the cleaner of Belgian political life, the Rexists wanted to recover from an electoral point of view part of the working class electorate. With this denunciation of scandal in the press as a purely electoral aim, as the Rexists wanted to rally people around them and this aggressive campaign of denunciation, the election of 33 MPs led in 1936 led to the introduction of this new discourse of denunciation of scandals in the Palais de la Nation, the seat of the House of Representatives and the Senate. And on July 6, 1936, the movement press announced a new campaign to denounce scandal described as the Hunt. We have to admit that the real Hunt with all our tracker and spikers begins today only. On Tuesday, the horn will sound for the big start. Dive into their hole like hunted rabbit. So on 7 July, the Rexist MP is here. It's Raphael Sandic, was due to speak against the Minister of Justice in the House of Representatives, but unfortunately he arrived late, 15 minutes late. But the questioning was brought to the Senate as a matter of urgency by another Rexist MPs. And what emerged from this interpellation, and mainly its 7 pages publications in the Rexist newspaper in this edition, is that the 3 traditional parties are accused of financial collusion and fraud with major banking organizations. Indeed, out of 75 recipients, 73 were directly linked to one or other political parties. The Rexists highlight that these organizations had received political support to obtain loans in matter of fraud. Considered by the Rexists as a veritable as a betrayal for the regime, this interpellation and its aftermath marked the climax of the denunciation in Belgium, denunciation of scandals, with the aim of serving a doctrine that of the cleanliness of political life and the positioning of Rex as the savior of Belgium. But to spread out this first denunciation in 1936-1937, Rex created an important propaganda campaign with multiple vectors during this period. The main vector for this denunciation in 1930 was usually the press. So during the 1936 election campaign and right up to the summer of 1937, the movement's various periodical Rex Montaigne, Rex Deutschland, Le Pays Réel, Also Dagblad, there are German, French and Dutch newspaper, this newspaper were full of attacks on traditional political parties. In a more than aggressive style, as we can see here, in a form of political advertising too, we see headlines attacking this or that party. This cover is from Catholic Affair. This front page built into the Rexist method to create an attractive visual effect and get reader to buy their press. Do not hesitate to use special and sensational language. The press is full of announcements when issue announce a sensational revelation and other terrible documents, or même sometimes we can see clean slogans on the cover. Every time there was a new scandal, the newspaper announced it on the sensational full pages, drawing the eye of the reader to the people involved in these scandals. This technique is used in all publications, regardless language or periodicity. But to go even further, the Rexist published specific brochure, I talked about it, to denounce political and financial scandals, called the J'accuse collection. Léon Debrel published them and had in this brochure supporting documents and data to help to spread this denunciation and this accusation among Belgian voters. In the press or in the brochure, the vocabulary used to denounce its scandals is also important. We see the words rotten banksters, civic plunders, or double dippers. This vocabulary is part of what we can call the Rexist language, and which make full use of the denunciation of scandals for political and electoral purpose. We also note the appearance of a whole lexical field into hunting or cleaning. This vocabulary can be also found in the movement poster. As we can see here, we have vote clean, vote Rex. Or here, again, the cumular is not, I don't know the word in English, so I think it's real word. Again, the cumular monster, vote Rex. So we can see on this poster typical left-wing representation of will of people, for example. But the propaganda went even further. Using the broom, as we can see yesterday, again. Okay. The Rexist went around the country majority carrying brooms, echoing the slogan "Sweep away the rotten," or they used this symbol in the 1936 election campaign with the claim that the jury alone denounced the rotten and exposed the scandals. For a long time, this symbol helped the movement to politicize scandals, creating a form of political spectacle. For example, in this announcement, in satirical this announcement from the club pattern, it's colorful parties. Every party has a color in Belgium, so it's the three traditional parties. The funeral was not to be attended, not with flower, but with broomstick. This leaflet includes all the political affairs denounced by the Rexists in the early days of their political life, such as the bankster van de Belgische van den Arbeid, so the bankster van the Belgian Labour Bank. In the same way, Rexist propagandists portray traditional parties as wanting to keep their cheeses, understanding rather their advantages in the various board of director. So we have in yellow the Catholic, blue the liberal, and red the socialist and member of POP. Cartoons, and we talked about this yesterday, I think cartoons also became a strategic weapon for politicizing the scandals. We can see cartoons depicting the Rexist broom in hand and cleaning up the political world of scandals and corruption scandals. In the album produced by the cartoonist Paul Jamin, we even see the alliance of the three traditional parties to avoid the misappropriation that look at the National Bank of Belgium in 1937 in the style of anti-Semitic cartoon as here, and I will come about anti-Semitic after. This importance of these graphic representations of scandals was not insignificant. It enabled the Rexist discourse on scandal in Belgium to be disseminated more widely, as well as symbolizing the movement political enemy and its doctrine. All this form of propaganda also went in hand with the introduction of the denunciation of scandals during the meeting. When we look at the various meetings held by Léon Debrel between 1936 and 1939, 1934, We mainly see this theme as during the 6th day of Rex in 1937, when Leon devoted an evening to scandals and the revolt of citizens in Brussels. In 1937, the discourse associated with this denunciation was that of a desire to purify and reveal the virtues of Belgium. For example, the crowd, what do you want, have been able to judge. They have seen at work a filthy regime of thieving politicians and communist fodder. In the same way, at every election, the Rexists reuse this theme of denouncing scandals with new elements, but not with new elements, but by positioning themselves as the only ones to denounce these scandals. The importance of this representation and figuration, full of symbols, had no other objective than to fully politicize the scandals in Belgium, but also to place the Rexist movement in the position of savior, almost messiah, coming to save Belgium and create a healthier political life without interference between political and financial world, for example. However, this technique quickly ran out of steam, and the Rexists had to reinvent their rhetoric in the midst of a period of radicalization, as well as dealing with the perception of these denunciations that changed rapidly over the period. Rex had a drastic place in Belgium after 1937. In April 1937, Leon de Wael stood alone in the by-election in Brussels against Prime Minister Paul van Zeeland. And all the campaign was strongly marked by the denunciation of scandals, and mainly in the National Bank, Belgian National Bank. The personal failure of Leon de Wael led to a radicalization of the discourse and therefore of the politicization of the scandals, with the introduction of new terms, mostly borrowed from the European fascism of the 1930s. In the movement's meeting and newspaper, anti-Semitism, anti-Freemasonry, and a strong anti-Marxism, stands quickly began to emerge, undermining the denunciation and politicization of scandals. During the National Bank affair, for example, Rexists highlight the involvement of Julius Barma, who was described as a socialist Jewish Ukrainian swindler. These were all the Rexists needed to demonstrate that one of the most important men in the country, Paul van Zeeland, the former prime minister, had compromised with a socialist Jew. So the introduction of a xenophobic, anti-Semitic, and anti-socialist discourse helped to shape the new direction of politicization and denunciation of financial scandals and corruption by the Rexist movement. The international situation at the end of the 1930s pushed Rexism to radicalize its politicization discourse even further. With the untruth in 1938, Rexists did not hesitate to portray the influx of foreigners in Belgium as people likely to lend their support to the scandals to come. From 1938 onwards, the scandals were seen as stemming from the action of Jews, who were often associated in the discourse with Freemasons because they were supporters of hypercapitalism and members of the high finance. Leon de Wael even said at a meeting in Antwerp in 1938, the Jews, like the Marxists, have been expelled because of their scandals. Also cannot be a dumping ground for international Jewry. So the period of radicalization also marked the formal invention of political scandals, right? So in the plundering of savings sponsored by politicians, a socialist desire, the impact of Moscow, or a plot involving by the Freemasons, for example. A transformation of the discourse that appeared. The Rexists denounced corruption in higher places in the government involving Jews, Freemasons, and socialists. In 1939, the resumption of proceedings against Leon de Wael for defamation following the revelation in 1936 of some scandals led the movement to accuse the justice system of being biased, in its handling of their cases and even of being in the service of Freemasons and the political world. In the same way, the bankruptcy of an Antwerp credit bank, which had already been implicated in corruption in 1936, helped to build a discourse around the Jewish administrator of the city banks. These elements of radicalization in the discourse clearly show the direction that the policy was taking. It is not longer a question of demonstrating that part of the political world is involved in corruption scandals, but of serving a broader and more extreme discourse. In the early day, part of the electorate may have been affected by this scandal and this politicization, mainly young people around 30 years old, as underscored by the 1936 results, 11% and 33 MPs in the House of Representatives. The slogan of this campaign in 1936 was "Hunt for the Rotten," and it lasted until the summer of 1937. But the strong politicization of political scandals, which was intended to serve a doctrinal ideal of purity, reached its limits. From 1938 onwards, the radicalization of the movement accelerated, but the new cases uncovered by the Rexis were much less about corruption than about purely political matters. The Rexis often used all cases in their political campaign until 1940 and the invasion of the Belgium by the German troops. Already in 1938, during the local elections, a brief attempt to denounce the traditional parties and their scandals in the management of the major Belgian city failed, considering of the perception of the movement more as an agitator than a true defender of the people. During the campaign of the 1939 general election, the last big campaign in Belgium before the war, Rex tried to reproduce the Hunt for the Rotten of 1936, and positioning themselves as the only political force to have denounced them. This campaign had little impact on the voting people, and a large proportion of voters considered Rexin to be an agitator, wishing only to destabilize political life by denouncing scandals that were often false or long-standing. As a result, the movement slowed down sharply in 1939 and 1940. This denunciation of scandals no longer worked, even with the addition of new data, they are often false. It mainly created an impression of a lack of sense about the 1939 and 1940 denunciations. Despite the importance of Rexist propaganda, the reception of this denunciation changed over the period, from being supported by a large proportion of the population to being totally rejected. The political world follows the same trend, criticizing the fact that Rexis wanted to clean house with mud, as we can see here. It's literally here, Marcel Henri Gestar who said this in the House of Representatives in 1939. So the position of savior of the Belgian people and of the real country and purifier of political life was undermined by the political world itself, but also by the radicalization of the movement. From the summer of 1939 onwards, the Rexists hardly denounced any cases facing a common front against them, made up of the entire political world and helping to marginalize this discourse. So, I'm on time, yeah? Okay, so in conclusion, using the example of the extreme right denunciation of corruption scandals in Belgium, where we have seen how in the era of mass politics in Belgium, a discourse of politicization of scandals can be constructed. While the initial denunciation seemed legitimate, real, and driven by an ideal of cleanliness, the discourse very quickly tended to become radicalized, and the politicization of scandals became the vector for an extreme ideology, reducing discourse common to the far right in the 1930s. Despite politicization based on a very strong propaganda made of large diffusion, which multiple vectors to transmit this denunciation and spread out in Belgium, the Rexist movement succeeded in attracting voters only in a minimal lapse of time. After this, Rex finding it opposed to a common front, but also the voters, criticizing the methods of denunciation and politicization, and leading them to consider Rexism as an agitator, wishing to destabilize the existing political balance with politicization and denunciation of corruption. Thank you for your attention.